My name is Cate Bohler, and I'm interviewing Mr. Alex Webster on March 31st, 2017. Thank you so much for spending your time today to speak with me.
You're very welcome.
How are you connected with the local community?
I have a restaurant on Main Street that we've had since 2007. And so I hire lots of local people, generally younger people. We have the people on the wait staff, and we have the people in the kitchen.
Cool.
And it's sometimes a bit of a challenge finding people, and it's usually very busy in the summer and a little too quiet in the winter. So sometimes it's difficult having year-round staff, but generally it's really fun.
Do you have any experiences that involve Otsego Lake?
I have a lot of experience on Otsego Lake, and I love Otsego Lake. And as you know, we have a sailboat, which is a little bit dumpy. We were actually members of the sailing club for about 3 years before we even got a boat, just because it was a really good place to go and they have a barbecue and bathrooms and a nice place to swim there, and it was sort of a nice group of people. So, but now we have a sailboat, which is 1970, I think, 6 sailboat. So it's not the most pretty sailboat on the lake, but it's a lot of fun. And you and I and Alex and Lucas like sailing. My other son, Oscar, he likes being on the boat as long as we don't put the sails up. For some reason, he's got it in his head that when it tips, it's really scary. And there's nothing we can really do to talk him out of it. So that's a little unfortunate sometimes when we all want to go sailing. But you, Cate, I remember we went out last summer and we tipped so much over, and you were on the other side of the cockpit, that you were basically like looking down right on top of me, and I was like, don't let go or you're going to fall right on me. And it was really fun, and it's cool that you aren't afraid of that. I think this is a big enough boat that it's not really likely to turn over. Would be pretty impossible, despite our attempts to make that happen. But it's really fun exploring the lake, and we like to go out and find nice spots to anchor and picnic and swim, and your brother Alex likes to scuba dive and is a big fanatic for collecting old bottles. So what is basically garbage, I think garbage once it's over 10 or 20 years old becomes collectible, especially the bottles. And I think we found some really old ones, which is really fun. And that's kind of fun, although I'm trying to talk him into not keeping everyone, because otherwise our whole house is full of broken bottles. But, and then one time on the lake, I was going to pick up the manager of the restaurant to go out swimming, and he didn't drive, so he was going to meet me down by lakefront, so I was trying to anchor down there so he could just wade out to me, and we could go out for a sail in the middle of the afternoon. But I anchored, and the anchor didn't hold very well, and the boat bumped into Council Rock. And I was like, oh my goodness, it would not be good if we knocked over Council Rock. That would be really probably not make me very popular with the locals. So, but we didn't, and it was all fine, and we went out and had a lovely sail. Although I think a lot of the tourists were looking at us and were very amused to see him wading out to climb onto the boat.
That sounds fun.
It was. It's a lot of fun to have a boat on the lake, and it's such a beautiful lake, and it's really, really fun.
So what is your favorite memory in your life of this community?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Let me see. Got lots of different memories, lots of things. So you want something favorite? I don't know. I guess probably one of the more exciting things I did is I cooked dinner for, Senator Patrick Daniel Moynihan was a wonderful senator that I liked very much, and he used to come to the restaurant when we had it in Cherry Valley. And he brought Hillary Clinton one day for dinner. and that was sort of exciting, and it was also very funny, the contrast, because Mrs. Clinton was the first lady at that time, and she showed up with an entourage of maybe 6
Wow.
big cars with people with, bags obviously full of weapons and Secret Service, and it was all very official, and they had to bring their own communication equipment because the cell phones didn't work, and they don't work, and they do now, but at that time they didn't work, and they were very funny about it, and said they had to dig out like old radio equipment to come, because she has to be able to be in communication with the president at any point. So that was sort of fun, but Senator Moynihan and his wife Liz just showed up in their old beat-up, I think it was a Chevy, and it was a rather beat-up car, and they were very casual, and it was just them. And he loved to go out, and there were some people who came by to, see what was going on in the evening, and had heard that she was going to be there, and there was a little crowd outside the restaurant, and he was very, very friendly and was out there and chatting with people. And meanwhile, the Secret Service, scooted Hillary away, and she was friendly and she was nice, but it was a fun evening. It was exciting, but poor Mrs. Moynihan, Liz Moynihan, was sitting in the car for hours waiting for Daniel Patrick Moynihan to finish chatting with everybody so that she could go home after everybody else had left, and then they just went off by themselves they had a house in Pinder's Corner outside of Oneonta, and they were just really, really nice people and really fun.
Were you nervous?
I was a little nervous. They had one of the people in the kitchen keeping an eye on me, I assume, to make sure I didn't do anything too bad. But he was quite friendly, and it was just, I think it was some of the Moynihan's children and Hillary and some other people, and it wasn't a big crowd, and the restaurant wasn't open that night. It was just for them. So it was pretty casual and fun, and I ended up actually leaning against the bar and chatting with Hillary for a good 20 minutes or something.
Wow.
And it was fun, but that was a long time ago, and things have changed a little bit. But I think some people thought that was wonderful, and some people thought it wasn't so good. But I was fairly non-political about it. It's always nice to cook for people, and so no, I don't think I was too nervous. But it was, I certainly wouldn't have been a good day to burn something. And I don't think I did, as far as I know.
That sounds amazing.
Thank you.
Do you think your role as part of the community is important?
I'm sorry, repeat the question?
Do you think your role as part of the community is important?
More and more I do. To tell you the truth, to be 100% honest, I grew up most of my life in big cities, and when I came up here in 1981, I was really looking to just live in the countryside more, and I lived in Roseboom and later in Cherry Valley, and I really liked sort of being kind of in the middle of nowhere. And living in Cooperstown is much more of a community.
Right.
And I like it. I'm growing to like it more and more, but I've never really been part of, I've either been in big cities or the middle of nowhere. And being part of a community is something that I've not had a lot of practice with. And actually, partly because of your mum, I'm getting much better at it. And she's very much more involved in things. And I'm starting to appreciate that that's actually really a good thing, and it's a little hard to sort of be somewhere and have a restaurant and just keep to yourself. And I'm actually doing a little better and finding out that it's kind of fun to be a little more involved in things. So it's getting better.
I can relate with that.
Yeah, good. Okay.
What is it? I know you have a restaurant here in our community, but why did you decide to start a restaurant?
Well, to be honest, I started a restaurant because I went to art college when I went to college, and I spent 4 years splashing paint onto canvas and paper and stuff, which was a lot of fun. And and a lot of people thought it was very good and liked it. And then when I left art college, in London, I came to America because my mother's American and my father's English, so I've always been back and forth a lot. And I bought a place in Roseboom, and with the idea of just going and painting. And strangely enough, when you're in the middle of nowhere and surrounded by Holstein cows and there's no people who have strong opinions about modern art, I found it very hard to be inspired and paint because there wasn't really anybody to push me or talk about it. And the cows really didn't seem to have any opinions worth listening to. So there was that, and then I didn't have any money, and I got kind of tired of not having any money, and I thought, well, what's something else that I can do that's creative and that I like to do? And it was cooking. I've always loved to cook. I always cooked as a kid and everything, which, not to be mean to my mother, but it may be something to do that she wasn't the greatest cook. So it was partly self-preservation. But I've always loved to cook, so I thought, well, you know what, if I cook, I can be creative and do something, and everybody likes to eat. Not everybody needs to buy paintings to put on the wall. So it just made sense. So I ended up going down to Key West, and because we wanted to get out of the winter a bit, and that was a place where there were a lot of restaurants. So I figured I didn't really want to go back to school, but I needed to go somewhere where there were lots of restaurants where I could get a job. So I got a job, and in about 2 years I went from being a line cook to being a chef in a restaurant that they opened up. And it was exciting and fun, and enjoyed it. And then the bowling alley in Cherry Valley was up for sale, and my friend Richie, who has Let It Grow Nursery, phoned me up. I was back in New York then, working for Dean and DeLuca, which is a big fancy food store, and I thought it was maybe starting to think about the idea of having children, and I didn't think that would be a great thing in the city. So we had the house in upstate New York still. I always kept it. And I thought, you know what, this bowling alley might make a really good little restaurant. And so that's what we did. And that was my first owning my own restaurant. And sometimes I miss working for other people because it's nice to be your own boss, but sometimes it's nice not to have all the problems be mine. Sometimes it'd be nice just to go to work and do my job and not have to worry if the sink was leaking or if something broke or if somebody didn't show up or something. But all in all, it's been a really positive experience, and I've gotten to know a lot of really wonderful people, and I'm also really proud that I think some people that have worked for me I've been able to help them get on with as a good start in life, and it's been a really positive thing.
That sounds good.
Good.
Have you had hard times in the wintertime with your restaurant?
Well, I wouldn't say the hard times are the winter per se. I think the hard time is the big difference between the summer and the winter. So it's very hot in the summertime. Everybody that can work can have a job, and sometimes it's it's not just me. All the businesses have a hard time finding employees to work through the summer, and in the winter time it's hard for me to have enough business to keep the people that I like employed and happy, because I don't want to lose them and then have to go out and find new people for the summer. So it's more the difference. We do about I would say more than 3 times the volume of business in August and July and September than we do in February, for example. So it's the same kitchen, it's the same amount of refrigeration, it's the same, lots of things will remain the same. So there's at least a couple of weeks there in August where it's really, really difficult to make everybody happy. And that's actually usually the time when we get some complaints. And it's just we can't invest in dealing with 2 weeks, with all the equipment and the staff just for a 2-week thing. So you have to sort of just try and cope with it the best you can, and usually we do. And then in the winter, there's definitely some weeks when nobody's there, and it's like we're sitting around, and but it's nice and cozy in the kitchen though, which is a nice thing, and that's a good time to experiment with new menu items and recipes and so forth, or do some fixing up or cleaning or painting. So all in all, it works out. I wish there wasn't quite such an extreme between the busy and the quiet. If it was a little more even, it would be a little easier.
That sounds interesting. I know that you moved to Cooperstown, but do you think that the community and maybe some of the buildings have changed since you've moved here?
Well, let me see. The community is definitely, the community's, as a community should, is always changing. And the buildings, they don't change that much, which I'm not sure is that good an idea. There's a lot of, as a business owner, I will say there's a lot of regulation about what you can and can't do, which I understand the intentions of it.
Right.
But it can be a bit of a burden if you're trying to make a living. And I think the fact that there's quite a few vacant buildings on Main Street might attest to that it's not always the most business-friendly environment. And sometimes it's... in Cherry Valley, I have a restaurant, and I can pretty much do what I want, and it's a lot easier and a lot less paperwork and less expensive. And Cherry Valley seems to do pretty well with that, and I wish Cooperstown would be a little more sensitive to, the businesses on Main Street are struggling by and large. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm struggling, but I'm not, as you well know, we haven't been on vacation in a few years, and it's not the easiest thing to do. And it would be nice if it felt that we could get a little more support from the community, as far as, I mean, not the customers. Of course, we get lots of support from them, and it's wonderful. But the village itself sometimes can be a little, tiring. How about we say that?
That makes sense.
Was that the question? I can't remember what the question was now.
Yes, the question was
buildings changing and things, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The next question is, do you have any stories that fascinate you, or maybe have something to do with the origin of Cooperstown or the community?
Yes. I actually there was a book that somebody gave me, or did I hear about it and buy it? But it's called William's Cooperstown, I think. And it was about the original, William Cooper was the original founder of Cooperstown. And it's very entertaining.
Wow.
And it's all about how they came here, and he, got the land tract and so forth, and owned it, and it has a lot about how it used to be back, and I guess this would have been 17 something or other, and it's a really fun story, and some of the names in it are still names of people around here today, and it's really fascinating when it talks about things like Council Rock and things to other places that you're familiar with every day now, and the history of it going back on. And I think maybe, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but it was kind of colorful, the novel, the book, the history, and the original Mr. Cooper was quite a character, maybe a bit of a charlatan. And I think that's a great history of how a town comes about. There was a lot of animosity between Cherry Valley and Cooperstown. I didn't know about that. And originally Cherry Valley was much bigger than
Really?
Cooperstown, and Cherry Valley by rights then should have been the county seat. But because William Cooper had a lot of political connections, he actually got it to be Cooperstown, and people in Cherry Valley were not at all happy about that.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, there was a lot of things. Actually, the other thing that was very cool was I really liked Mr. Henry Cooper, who, let me see, he must have died was it last winter or the winter? I think it was the winter before last we went to his funeral, and he was a really fun character, and it was fascinating to know somebody who was, the relative that went back that far, and he was a really nice guy. He was a good customer, and he was a really fun and nice and friendly guy. And that was just, so it's kind of nice to feel like you're sort of living as part of history, especially nowadays when everything is so temporary and disposable. It's nice that you have that connection with the time. And sometimes I imagine what it would be like to, sit by Council Rock and just to be like 200 years ago and how it must have looked.
Yeah,
And,
must have changed a lot.
I must have changed a lot. And not all for the good, but but change is change, and you can't stop it.
Wow, I never knew about Cherry Valley and Cooperstown.
Oh yeah, well I think they get along better now.
Do you enjoy any activities on the lake, and if so, what activities?
Oh, I think we covered that one.
Any other
the
activities?
sailing. Let me see what else. Well, I like to swim. I try in the summertime. I try to swim around the boats in the sailing club in the harbor, which is a good swim. But I didn't do it as much last year as I did the year before. And I like to fish, but apparently the fish don't like me because I am probably the worst fisherman in the entire world. If I ever catch a fish and eat it, it's going to be the most expensive fish that you could possibly buy, because I've spent so much money on fishing equipment over the years, but I've never actually, I think I've hardly ever caught a fish. But still, it's relaxing to fish. So I like to fish, I like to sail on the lake, and I like to swim, and I like to explore, especially if you go down by the state park down by there's the woods up around there and the rocks and things. It's a lot of fun.
I get scared in woods.
Oh, well.
Do you have any moments that have changed your life?
Boy, where would we start? Lots of moments that have changed my life. I've had quite a full life, which I think is a good thing, and lots of growing experiences. Some moments, situations that I put myself into, and some things that just happen. But let me try and think. Moments that have changed my life. I don't know. I think I'd have to think about that.
Okay.
Why don't you pause it for a second?
Okay.
I mean, I guess my biggest life change in the last, in my fairly recent history would be meeting Janine, who is my wife, and I got a package deal with that. Not only do I get the most wonderful wife in the world, and I'm extremely happy, but she also came along with 2 children, and I only had 2 before, so I get a real deal. And one of them is interviewing me right now, Miss Cate, and the other is Alex, which sometimes can be a bit confusing because my name's Alex too. So I think it was Cate's idea to give me a nickname, and I think this is the time when we managed to spend a little time in the winter in Costa Rica. And I think because I like to try and collect coconuts off the trees, and then one friendly Costa Rican gave me a machete because he felt sorry for me and showed me how to get the husk off the coconut and thing. I think Cate decided to call me Coconut. So even now, when we're having dinner or something, we're all together, and somebody wants to ask me a question, they can't just say, "Oh, Alex." So they say coconut, which often amuses people who don't know us. So my official name when we're all together is Coconut, which I'm very fond of, and I think that fits. So I would say my most wonderful life-changing experience was in the last 5 or so years would be meeting my most wonderful wife and having 2 more children, which is just most of the time wonderful and fun, and
I can remember that.
I bet you can.
What do you do for your leisure time when you're not running your business?
What do I do in my leisure time?
Yes.
Okay, well, again, I think we kind of covered that because it's sailing, fishing, swimming. I like to walk in the woods, go for walks in the woods and explore. Usually take a thermos of tea or something and some snacks. I love to light little fires and cook things and camp. I'm not so much camping, but just like all day sort of walks in the woods. And I'd like to travel a little more. I don't do that as much as I would like to.
What about up on the big land that you have?
On the big, right. So in Cherry Valley we have land, and I love to explore that. And I've got a dog Zoe, who loves to run around, and is actually, she's about 6 years old now, and she's gotten much better. She used to have a bad habit of chasing deer, but now she just looks at them and gets very excited, but doesn't actually chase them, which is good. So her and I can go for long walks and hang out. And there's a wonderful creek on the land. I'm sorry, and that may not be correct English. Is it? I call it crick, but I think maybe that's not good. But never mind. But it's a lot of fun, and I like to go and sit down there and build dams and stuff. In fact, Cate and Alex and Oscar and Lucas, sometimes we all go down there and we build dams and explore, and it's fun, and it's nice also to get the kids off of the computer and electronic stuff and to be out. So I'm a big nature fan, and I like to do some gardening, but I'm not a very good gardener. Let me see, for recreation. That's nice to get. I like it when it's good weather. I want to get out. So, and play in the mud.
That's the opposite of me.
Yeah, well, we'll work on that.
Have you had any other jobs in Cooperstown besides owning a restaurant?
Oh my goodness. 1981, I worked for Sidney Waller, who's a local Cooperstown person who's been around a long time. And I'd come out of art college, and she had Gallery 53 on Pioneer Street. I think 53 or 50, I think 53, on Pioneer Street. And I helped her, actually, the first job I had was she was doing an exhibit of ceramics and pottery and sculptures.
Ooh.
And I helped with that, and it was a lot of work, and that was fun. I think that was my first job, and then I ended up working with a friend of mine doing carpentry, and
wow.
So generally it's never been very easy to find work around here. So that's why in the end I ended up creating my own job.
Those sound like fun jobs.
But it was nice working with Sidney Waller, and it was Elizabeth Niels was the potter. And in fact, just last winter I went to her studio, and I realized it was 30-something years since I'd been there again.
Oh.
And we bought a bunch of really beautiful mugs for everybody, for the staff, for Christmas presents from her, and it was a lot of fun. And she's just the most wonderful person. And she used to make plates that we used at the restaurant, but
wow.
They didn't hold up too well for industrial use, so it got a bit expensive replacing them. But that's a shame. But
that sounds like a fun job before your restaurant.
Right. I've always loved to do pottery too, but I don't do it as much as I'd.
I love pottery too.
Right. You've been doing the pottery classes.
So as we're coming to the end of our time together, I have just 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
What words of wisdom or advice would you give to young people today?
Oh, words of wisdom and advice for young people. Believe in yourself,
That's helpful.
but don't believe everything you believe.
Can you explain that?
Be open-minded.
Ah.
Don't go out thinking you know everything and it's never going to change. Go out into the world with an open mind and come to your own, trust your instincts and your senses and come to your own conclusions and your own ideas about the world. And remember, anybody, I think around here, you're very, very lucky and privileged to have all the opportunities we have, as opposed to a lot of people in the world.
That sounds
hopefully
helpful.
do something with that.
That's helpful.
Okay?
I try to stay in open mind. The last question is there anything else that you'd like us to know about your life growing up in this community or anything?
Well, I just think it's very, my early childhood until I was about 18 was spent when I came over here. I'd always lived in big cities and mainly in London or New York, and there everybody's very anonymous and nobody knows anybody else. And I've always sort of thought it was very fun to come to a small town where people know you. I think some people don't like not losing that privacy, but I've always sort of not. Maybe I've been a little too easygoing with that, because sometimes I used to sometimes just say things to start rumors just because I thought it was funny how things get back so quickly. I mean, things about myself, not about other people.
Oh.
But because I always thought it was kind of funny living, because I'd never really, when everybody knows what everybody else does, I've never really been used to that. But I think it's kind of funny, and I don't take it too seriously. But I guess some people do. But but anyway, maybe I'm learning, and I love being part of a community and part of and somebody who people say hi to me on the street and I say hi to them, and it's I don't think I could ever go back to living in a big city like that, but
Yeah.
it's certainly fun to visit, especially the restaurants.
Yes. Thank you for sharing. Your stories will be a great addition to our project.
I certainly hope so. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.